All right, so we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shambria Davis, and I am here on behalf of AIDS United for our 2023 new initiative, Melanated Movement. I am super excited. I'll be moderating the conversation today. And before I have these beautiful women introduce themselves, I'm going to let you all know that today is the National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day to encompass Black History Month. So we have a 2 for 2 1. We're going to tackle them all in today's conversation, and I am super excited. But before I keep going, I'm going to have these lovely ladies introduce themselves, and I am going to start with Cynthia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Cynthia Tucker. I go by she and her from AIDS Foundation Chicago, where I am the Senior Vice President of Community Partnerships and Special Projects, where my work really focuses on working with cis and trans women, doing capacity building and technical assistance, and working with the reentry population.
Thank you, Tamara.
Yes, thank you for having me. I am Tamara Stephanie. I am the COO of Abounding Prosperity in Dallas, Texas. I have been with this organization for over 11 years now, and I am very happy to be here today.
Well, we are excited to have you both. You all listen. These women have stated that they have been in their profession some time now. So we're going to have a plethora of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding coming from these women in today's conversation. So we're going to go on and get started. And the first question that I have, especially in relation to the National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, I'm going to start out with Cynthia. So the question that I have is, since this year's theme is National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, the theme is Together We Can Make HIV Black History. Hence, we are in Black History Month. How do you feel we can integrate HIV into Black history? What initiatives, approaches, if any, would need to be considered within the Black community to make HIV a part of Black history? Cynthia.
Thank you so much. It's such a timely question. I think as we think about it, we've made a lot of strides in HIV and AIDS over the years. But for when we think about Black individuals, we need to think about continuing the fight to have our places at the table and ensuring that we pretty much are working on the design, the decision, making sure we're part of the distribution, life saving knowledge and resources, that we are joining forces with other movements and creating movements. We have to continue to have a culturally appropriate interventions designed that not only address the health disparities, but also the social determinants of health. We need to advocate for bundled interventions that are designed to meet women and priority populations where they are and allow them to be at the table. It is not enough for us to just say that we are providing HIV tests. We need to make sure that we have resources. And I think most importantly, one of the things that I want to make sure that we are thinking about is that we are diversifying the public health workforce and ensuring that women are being served and are part of projects and programs. It's really important that we are at the table. You know, for so long, we've been fighting to be at these tables. And so we need to make our presence known. We need to continue to advocate, and we have to band together. No organization or individual can do this work alone or in a silo. We need to make sure that we are working and we are collaborating and that we have community partnerships.
Absolutely. Tamara, before I get to you, Cynthia, I want to follow up with a question. So you're talking about making sure that we have a seat at the table. And I know a lot of times we, especially within the Black community and then, women, we feel like, okay, well, how do we get a seat at the table? Like, who's going to want us at the table? Like, how do we allow our voices to be heard? So you keep talking about, having a seat at the table, which is very pivotal. But in a practical standpoint, what does that look like? What does that conversation look like?
And it's reciprocal. It is on both sides. So it's for the organization to reach out and work with community and make sure those partnerships are there. We can't do programs without having individuals inform those programs. So the community needs to be a part. So it's one thing to do focus group, but it's another thing to have a community advisory board that is a part of your project. And so that you're inviting them in, they are with you as part of your interventions. They're helping to create those interventions. And when I said we need to have creative HIV workforce, we need to hire from the population. It is something that we work on together. And then people, community, we want you to walk into our organizations and pretty much demand that you are at the table, that you are on community advisory boards, that there are various focus groups, listening sessions, and all of that as a part of your programs because you're working within communities.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And Tamara, I'm going to pass it over to you again. How can HIV be integrated into Black history, and what are those approaches and initiatives look like?
Sure. In keeping with the theme, we can make Black history by doing just that, standing together in solidarity, standing together, acknowledging that HIV is a health issue among Black Americans and that it includes all Black Americans, that is not specific to one group of individuals within the Black community, but that all of us together are affected by HIV. The approach is that we would have to take into consideration that we still have a long way to go in terms of education within our community. Oftentimes, because of the populations that we have typically worked with, we think that we have made a lot of strides. But when we go into other sectors within our community, specifically with Black women, we realize that we still have a lot of education that we need to do. We still have challenges that we have to face, challenges combating stigma and bringing awareness and normalizing HIV, um, empowering people to take control of their sexual health is what I encourage. And not working in these silos as if HIV only affects one part of our community. And when we come together, and I mean really come together, then we can make HIV a part of Black history. We can make HIV a part of history. Approaches are to create spaces that are safe and trustworthy and culturally appropriate to have these conversations, by working together as a community with love, with understanding, and accepting each other's differences.
Mhm.
We can integrate HIV into Black history as a monumental accomplishment.
Absolutely. I agree. I like the last part when you said like a monumental accomplishment, because when you think about, HIV has such like a negative connotation based upon, past and not having much resources and stuff. But now it's a different time. It's a new time. Of course, we know that HIV has yet to, be gone, but we are progressing, with the times. And so I feel once again, with just the sentiments that both you ladies have shared, like this is the appropriate time. We're at the beginning of Black History Month, and we have to understand that HIV again disproportionately affects us within our community, whether we are of lived experience, whether we have loved ones, friends, families, acquaintances, associates that are a part or even of lived experience. So I definitely feel like just again with having the conversation like we are doing right now in this
Right.
moment, we are bridging and integrating the gap between what Black history looks like and HIV to make sure that they encompass each other in one.
Sure.
And so before I keep going, I wanted to know if you all had anything else to say on that before I go to the next question.
Oh.
All right. Well,
Mhm.
before I keep going, I do want to make sure to add those that are watching in real time. You can pose any questions. You can just drop them and we will make sure to address them at the end of our conversation. So I'm going to move along. And of course, when we have these conversations, we have to make sure we provide statistics and we have to make sure we provide our references point to make sure that we're just not pulling this information out of nowhere. So, according to HIV.gov, Black Americans continue to be disproportionately affected by HIV compared to other racial and ethnic groups. One of the goals of the National HIV/AIDS Strategy of 2022 through 2025 is to reduce HIV related disparities and health inequities, such as social determinants of health. So, for those who aren't familiar with social determinants of health, they are environmental conditions that affects where people are born, live, and a wide range of health, functioning, and quality of life outcomes, which impact the Black community when seeking appropriate access to care. So, Tamara, I'm going to first address you with this question. How does each of you and or your organization strive to ensure HIV awareness among the Black community is integrated within your organization?
Sure. So at Abounding Prosperity, our mission is to provide services that address health, social, economic disparities among Black Americans, with particular emphasis on gay and bisexual men, cisgender women, transgender women, and their families. Having grown from an organization that initially started as an HIV prevention CBO, our strategy became to integrate prevention and care into a wraparound services, adding STI, Hep C screening, treatment, PrEP, behavioral health counseling, case management, interventions, other wellness activities, thereby creating multiple entry points into our programs for the Black community. The services are not only administered by a team that represents the gamut of Black people, but they also occur within historically Black communities here in Dallas County. We've created spaces that are warm and culturally inviting for our community. We are visible throughout the community. We're present at community events that allow our team and our community to really get to know one another, to establish a rapport, and to build trust. And so I think it's important that we not only show up in these spaces, but that we're not just sitting in the office. We're here, we're in the office. Everyone knows us and they're welcome into our spaces, but we get out into the community. We make ourselves visible because we want to build that trust and we want to build that rapport. So being a part of events such as the Martin Luther King parade and making sure that we are going down the main fairway of the city talking about HIV awareness is very important. And so, and out in the community, just today we have a community event, and again, our spaces are here in the Black community. So, opening our doors and inviting everyone in to see, hey, what's going on? What is this about? And giving them things and offering them information, but just offering them love and welcoming them without using HIV necessarily as always a tactic.
Absolutely. You mentioned trust and you mentioned love. So I know a lot of times in this field of work, it's about, again, initiatives, approaches. We have to, make sure our organization is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and P. But sometimes we miss those components of love and trust. So just from like your personal perspective, like on a day to day, what does establishing and developing trust look like? And also making sure that we extend the love to those who may be seeking services or even just wanting more information?
Well, for me, Shambria, it starts with the fact that I am a Black woman, I am a Black mother. And so the trust and the love that I have emits simply because of who I am and culturally my experiences as a Black woman. And so our spaces sometimes are non-traditional in terms of how we receive our clients, and we really meet them where they are. Our staff is very diverse. And so what we do in our approach and our strategy is that sometimes we have to utilize different staff for different purposes in order to find the right appropriate person that can deliver that message, that can get the buy-in, and that can welcome that client or that patient into our space and really build that trust. And so for me, again, me being a mother figure is
Mhm.
typically one of the strategies that comes natural to me to let someone know, hey, this is okay and this is a safe space for me to be.
Absolutely. The strategy and just taking in a more personal approach, I feel like that definitely plays a part in ensuring that these awarenesses are not just one that's talked about, but it's
Mhm.
also felt. And also, Cynthia, I can't leave you out this conversation. So with your organization, how do you all strive to make sure that HIV awareness among the Black community is integrated within your organization?
Yeah, AFC has been doing work for over 35 years, and making sure that individuals really have access to the information, resources. We provide care programs, housing, and making sure that we're doing policy and advocacy, one with the community. So, again, just like Tamara discussed, we really want to make sure that we're a part of the community, we're in the community, we're going to events. We actually help to fund some of those events by working with some of our community partners. One of the things that we really want to do is make sure that people trust us, that we are showing up, and that the people that we're working with, most importantly, feel comfortable enough to come in and ask for services and know that they have the right, and that we are really talking about trying to go back to the beginning of your question, race, and that we know that we have created over time these structural things that are in our way. They're challenges. And so we really have to focus on those. And we know it's not going to happen overnight, but working with community to try to do those. And so we have been advocating to make sure that we have access to resources, information, funding, and we're not there yet. We have a long way to go. It is a work in progress, but we're letting community know that that's a part of it. And then also making sure that we have the staff that look like and mirror our populations that we're serving. When people come into the door, they want to see someone that looks like them.
Mhm.
They want to know. And we work with community organizations. So most of our direct services are through our organizations that we work with because they have that. They're on the ground level, they're doing that work, and they have that trust and love. And I agree. We have to approach this with this is our community, this is our family. We hold you in high regard, and we want
Mhm.
to work with you on the challenges that you are having. And we know that people are really dealing with the social determinants of health. It's not one thing we can offer you a test, but we also need to help you find a job. We also need to help you locate housing. We need to make sure that we have those resources that are available. Because until that, unless someone is safely housed, they cannot think about whether I should take PrEP or whether I should take a HIV test because they're worried about where they're going to stay.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with both of you all's statement. And I know for me, we have questions and stuff, but I view this as a conversation. And so as you ladies are talking, I'm thinking like 10 steps ahead. So anyone can answer this question. This is something that just popped up in my head. We talk about trust. Again, we talk about love. We talk about positive representation. And so each of you being in your respective organization for the extended time that you are a part of, what does longevity look like for you and or your organization to make sure that this work continues?
So I can start. I've been at AFC for 17 years and I'm aging myself. So I've been working in the field for almost 30 years. And it's making sure that we are consistent, that we're providing the correct services, and that we don't think we have it all the answers. And so we're flexible enough to make changes when needed, and we are adapting to what the community needs. And then over the years, we have seen, and especially through COVID, over the last couple of years, we've really had to adapt as organizations and make sure that we were still able to provide those services. And then again, I think I keep coming back to the workforce. And so while I might not do all the direct services because I do not look exactly like the person who is coming in the door, I want to make sure that that person is hired within AFC and providing those services, and not at AFC, but at our community based organizations and our partnerships that we work with. It is important that we really have services that handle an array of issues. So, not only with housing, employment, but mental health, making sure that we are taking care of all of those things. People who are coming from jail and prison, they have access to an ID. These are things that you wouldn't even think about, but people are in need of those to survive.
Right. I agree with Dr. Cynthia. When it comes to sustainability for our organizations, organizations that want to sustain themselves, that plan to survive, they have to be nimble and adaptable to the ever changing landscape in HIV, because it changes. It changes with the years. It changes with the generations, and so you have to be able to adapt to those changes. Um, we talk about being in the field for a long time, and of course, to my knowledge, because I'm not that old, but it looks much different now than
Mhm.
what HIV prevention looked like, 20 years ago, right? And so we've had to adapt to, integrating different types of biomedical components into our organizations if we're going to keep that going. So it's about sustainability, and it's about being strategic and creative in ways that you would be able to sustain your organizations.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. The sustainability, the longevity, and is multi-dimensional and generational. So you have, people say, oh, I say seasons because everything tastes better when it's seasoned. So when you have the season generation, so we
Right.
look at HIV prevention and care back in like the 80s or the 90s. So
Right.
it was resources and references developing, but it wasn't that much. Then, we migrate into the 2000s, and then here we are in the 2020s. So I definitely feel like, just like you ladies both shared, it's about making sure that we keep with the signs of the times. I
Mhm.
don't feel like we need to forget where we came from. Again, we're talking about Black history, so they're going to coincide with each other. So I don't feel like we need to forget where we came from, but we need to learn and understand that as we continue on doing this work, as we continue on to spread the awareness, how can we get people to be more involved with this conversation? How do we get more people to be involved with the awarenesses, especially when social media is one of those elements where it's consuming everybody's time? It's consuming, especially like I'm a millennial. And so my generation, and especially the generation after me, we're constantly on social media. We're constantly looking at the next best thing. So taking again what history and historical text has provided for us when it comes to HIV awareness and prevention, how can we integrate that into, okay, we're here, we have social media, so let's pop an ad on social media. Let's do a little TikTok reel that has, facts about, HIV awareness. So again, just to share sentiments with what you all are saying and combining the two responses, I definitely agree with making sure that sustainability and longevity definitely encompass and coincides with how to keep with the signs of the times. And then also to mention, I know you all talked about, social determinants of health and, HIV related disparities and health equities. So I want to pose this question to Dr. Cynthia first. We talk about social determinants of health, but then we also know, health equity. So, what is, in your opinion, health equity, and how does health equity play a role in HIV prevention, PrEP, so on and so forth?
So, we need to make sure that we are looking at several things when we talk about equity. There's a big difference between equity and equality. And so, a lot of times, a lot of the focus is on equality. We want to make sure that not only do people have access, but they have the compatible access that allows them as an individual to be a part or take part of the services that we are providing. So it's one thing to give a person a bike, but we want to make sure that the person has the appropriate bike to get where they're going. And so it is really important that we encompass all of these various things into our programs, that we're listening to individuals, that we're talking about race. That is so important. And I think the fact that it's National Black HIV and AIDS Day, it is important for us to all say, wow, let's take a look, let's reflect a little bit on what we've done, what we need to do, and how can we be more sustainable but flexible in working with. And you mentioned it, Shambria, we have to do various things that are different. So things that we used to do and just do a lot of outreach, we need to use social media because that is the age group of individuals. But then we have another group of individuals that have been living with HIV for a long time. We also need to outreach to them. So we need to make sure that we have various vehicles to reach people, that we have various resources and information, and that we have the tools that people need. And it's one thing that I think about, and I think about PrEP a lot. And not only access to PrEP for various populations, but making sure we're getting rid of stigma, making sure that we are allowing individuals to come in where they are and we're meeting them where they are to give them those services. That's what I think we need to do when it comes to equity and equality. Making sure that we have that workforce that looks and resembles like the population. We are the majority of new HIV cases. So if we are the majority, then we need to see Black people when we go into organizations. We need to make sure that there are more healthcare providers that are able to provide, because you feel a comfort when you go in and you see, it's like going, like a female is going to a beauty shop and they're going in and get a chance to see someone that they know that can do their hair and can do it well. And not someone that is plain and doesn't understand the texture of our hair. It's the same thing with the services that we have. So it's just really important that we are flexible, we have those resources, and that we have that trust. I'm going to go back to what Tamara said is so important, that trust and that love, because people can tell when you come in if you don't care. It really shows.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia. Tamara?
Yes. Well, and what is health equity? And the question was, and how does it health equity play a role in HIV prevention and PrEP? Um, of course, we know health equity is fairly achieving the most optimal health, and the key word is fairly, because Black people are disproportionately impacted by poverty, crime, housing access, food insecurity, infant mortality. Health equity is much more than just challenging to achieve in our community. The foundation on which our healthcare system was created gives us an unfair disadvantage to resources, which creates a lack of access to healthcare needed to reach optimal health, right? So, lack of access to HIV prevention, PrEP, HIV medical care. This means disease progression, not just with HIV, but with other diseases and conditions brought on by lack of health care and other resources. The barriers that one faces plays a huge role in accessing medical care. Barriers such as culturally inappropriate providers, not having insurance, a vast array of social determinants. This is going to delay HIV prevention and care. And delayed treatment means poor health outcomes, which again, then being able to reach health equity is not very accessible to everybody in our community. So, as Dr. Cynthia said, it's up to us to be able to provide these resources to address the barriers so that HIV prevention, PrEP, and other medical resources can be accessed by our Black community.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And I feel and know that this question is appropriate because, again, when you talk about, equity and you talk about equality, we've all heard over time, we want equality, we want equality, we want equality. And, that's not a bad thing. But again, having to realize and understand that social determinants of health, especially within our community and demographic, it looks different. We don't have this access to care. We may not have these privileges and opportunities as our counterparts that don't look like us or sound like us or even represent what we represent. So it's good to understand and really decipher and break down the difference between equality and equity, because we can shout from the rooftops we want equality, but what is equality? Not saying it's a bad thing. What is equality when we really don't have the equity to really support what equality looks like? So I agree with both you ladies, and I just think it's one of those things that it's going to be a continuous work. And the same thing when we talk about health equity, and again, integrating this within Black history, and again, making this HIV a part of Black history. I would be remiss if I didn't mention also what plays a part is sometimes medical mistrust. We want to go into, organizations, and we want to go into CBOs, and we want to go into health departments, and we want to be able to see people that look like us. At the same time, because of historical, again, context and just history from us, we have this sense of, okay, well, I can't trust this person, or I can't trust this field. Not that I don't want the help, not that I don't want to feel better, not that I just want to come in and just make sure that I'm feeling good today and I have the resources, but because of this overarching realm or this cloud, okay, I don't think I can trust the medical system. I feel like that plays a part in, social determinants of health, that plays a part in access and health equity, and then also too, that plays a part in making sure that we receive the care and we go forward to receive the care that we deserve.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything before I move forward, but I just wanted to add that in.
No,
No,
absolutely.
I think you hit it on the head. I think really making sure that we look at the historical components as we talk about this on this day, that it's important because it actually informed the work that we do. And I think when you talked about medical mistrust, we have many individuals who are, they just don't want to go in for those services because they are scared they're going to be laughed at or talked about. So we need to ensure that as organizations, we're providing the best services, the most culturally responsive services that we can.
I agree. I totally agree with you. And in speaking on the equality and the equity as healthcare providers and service providers, we can't forget the trauma that this has caused within our community. And so when we do our jobs, we have to always do our jobs keeping in mind where people are and why they are where they are. And so being humble and in the work that we do, and sometimes that gets missed. And so having organizations like ours and having providers like myself and like Dr. Cynthia, where people can go, that we understand and we know what the trauma is and what our clients and patients may present with.
Absolutely. And I'm loving the feedback. I'm loving the comments that are coming in. Tamara and Dr. Cynthia, like, y'all are just providing a lot of information. And we talk about having conversations. We know sometimes, especially within our Black community, some conversations can be hard. Some conversations can be, oh, hush, hush, we're going to sweep that under the rug. And then some conversations can be a little taboo. So, of course, with National HIV Awareness Day, it's one of the many days we recognize and spread awareness about HIV and AIDS. How do we continue to have the conversation and spread more awareness, especially when it can be viewed as a taboo topic within the Black community? And Tamara, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Um, First, I want to challenge the interest and discussion of HIV being regulated to observation days, right? I think that we should talk about HIV throughout the year and not just reserve it for these important awareness days, right? HIV is one of many health disparities that consistently ravages our community. So we need to normalize conversations around HIV, just as we talk about cancer, COVID-19, diabetes, hypertension, and obesity with vigor. So HIV deserves the same respect. Um, if we don't talk about it, the stigma is only exacerbated, right? And in order for us to really normalize the discussions, we've got to normalize conversations around sexuality. We've got to normalize conversations around pleasure. We've got to empower people to take control of their sexual health. And we've got to normalize that conversation, basically, really about talking about sex. We Where we have these discussions, that's important. We've got to have these discussions in safe spaces, but also in religious spaces, in our homes, in our schools. This is paramount. Not just having the conversations when they come to a CBO or when they come to a group. This has got to be something that we just normalize throughout our community because it's happening. These things are happening in our community. We tend to want to, as you said, sweep things under the rug and make things taboo. But talking about sex, we got to stop compartmentalizing it in this taboo space because it's happening. So we want to be able to be comfortable, and we want everyone to get comfortable with talking about it so that we can reduce stigma.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia.
You pretty much said it all, Tamara. I just would add to that because I don't want to repeat. It's just about having a commitment that we will have these conversations, we'll have these frank discussions, that nothing is taboo, but we won't re-traumatize people. And so making sure that we are doing it in a way that allows people to come to you, share information, and you have the resources to give back to them so that they don't feel like this is something, if I'm going to go in here, they're going to make me repeat. So doing the advocacy of making sure that we're not doing too many assessments, over assessing people, not asking them the same questions. So it's on us as well to make sure that we are not doing that and inflicting that onto people, that we are saying to them, come for our resources, we have your information, and we're not going to continually ask you to create, to fill out an assessment form. We have that information on you. And that we are going to have these conversations and make you feel comfortable in talking about it. And again, our HIV workforce has to feel comfortable. So if we don't feel comfortable talking about it, of course, the individual coming in to talk to you is going to be uncomfortable. So we have to make sure that we have a rapport with clients, and that the staff are building that over time and building that level. So I agree.
Absolutely. You both said something like so pivotal, and I'm over here like taking notes, and I want to have a follow-up. I want to have a follow-up question. So I know for me, and I'll use myself as an example for the sake of conversation. So I know for me, I'm 30, I'm a millennial, but my mom, she is 62. So again, you have that generational gap of having that conversation. It could be a thing. Okay, well, her mom didn't have the conversation with her. So here you have me. We may have had some conversation, but not as much. So I want you all to like briefly talk about what does the conversation look like, especially if there is not, well, let me not say especially, even if there's a generational gap or not, because we can talk about taboo, we can talk about having the conversation, but what does that look like if we are scared to have that conversation?
I can start because I'm probably in the same group as your mom. So thanks for bringing that. And it's just important that I get rid of my biases and things that things that I was brought up with. That you don't do this and that you don't do that. Things are happening now. We have to understand the world that we're living in. We also have to understand the historical things that come with that, because regardless of where a person is, you're carrying that with you, and especially as a Black individual. And so we want to make sure that we're having those frank conversations, we're educating each other so that it's reciprocal. So just as much as your mom may have a conversation with you, you need to say, you know what, this is what is happening. This
Mhm.
is what is going on. And I want to have a conversation with you about it. And we can't be afraid to have these discussions and to have these chats. It's just really so important. I know we did a listening session with a group of women this summer, and they said, we just need someone to talk to. I feel like I am secluded, I'm isolated, especially after coming after COVID. So we had these sessions so that we could bring them in, so they can celebrate each other. And people need hugs, people need to talk and make sure that they're on a level with someone else and that they're not an outsider because they have HIV or because they think they are at risk. Although I hate that term, vulnerable.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Thank you,
Yeah.
Tamara.
Um, I think that we have to create spaces when you talk about generational differences, but we have to create spaces and we have to give grace to the older generation. And because we have to remember that for Black people, it's cultural, right? And so we have to create a space then for our mothers and parents then to have an opportunity to express themselves where they're coming from, but also allow us to teach them because they need to be taught. They have to unlearn what they were taught by their mother and their grandmother in order to have these conversations with millennials and those that come after them. And that can oftentimes be challenging for them to receive that. And so, if we can proceed again with love and grace, and hopefully that our mothers and our grandmothers will then be receptive to receive this new information, this new knowledge, and understand how this will then impact and create a loving space and open up communication between this parent and their child.
Absolutely. Grace, open communication, dialogue is definitely key. And I know for me, just on the receiving end of it, when I look back, because hindsight is 2020. So when I look back, it's like, oh, if I would have knew then what I would have knew now, oh, it would have made a world of difference. But I had to understand as I go. And I know, like, I'm 30, but I was raised around a lot of seasoned women. So they like to say, and it's a cultural thing, the old saying, you understand more and more by and by. So here I am in the by and by, and I'm understanding a lot more. And I find myself too, we're having conversations, with my mom and being able to again extend grace because though the information is pivotal, I have to extend the grace. And again, I'm just using my mom as an example.
Mhm.
Well, is my mom going to be receptive of the information? Though the information is there, though it's prevalent, though it's real, will she be receptive? I can't be frustrated because my mama is not receptive of the information because at that particular time, what information was really given? And then also from the standpoint, like you said, Tamara, having to realize, having to extend grace. And so again, grace, love, trust, understanding that definitely plays a part when we are talking about having these conversations and just not being so taboo and normalizing, like Dr. Cynthia said, like normalizing the conversation. If we can talk about, going to, I'm using this as like very last, but going to the store, I'm gonna go get a daily checkup, or I'm about to do this and go get my prescription. Something as simple as that, and reframing your mind to not feel like, oh my gosh, it's on a hush hush, can normalize the conversation and can alleviate some of the pressure when it comes to having those conversations.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I definitely agree and echo the sentiments, and just thank you all for sharing that. And Dr. Cynthia, you pointed out something. I really feel like, y'all are reading my mind when it comes to these questions, because you talked about something, using language and, stigmatizing, and you don't like when something is being said. And that leads us to the next question. Would it help reduce stigma if the conversation around Black HIV/AIDS awareness was more prevalent in mainstream media and in all forms of storytelling, and not just mentions as it relates to news, statistics, and big pharmaceutical ads?
Yes, absolutely. We really need to make sure that it is not, there's two different things that are happening. One, we see the commercials and we see mountains and someone sliding off the mountain and we think everything is beautiful. And then we get another image from a different social media about individuals, and it's kind of taboo and people don't want to talk about it. We've got to make sure that this is mainstream, that it's in social media, that we're talking about it. We're talking about it from a place where all communities have an understanding of it, because there's different communities within our communities, and we need to make sure that they know we're talking to them. We need to make sure that we have individuals that look like them, that are a part of campaigns and programs, so that when you ride down the street, you don't see something that's a sign that doesn't look like you or doesn't resemble someone in your own community. You need to also have messengers and messages that actually relate to the different and various populations. And so it is vitally important that we have ambassadors. And it goes back to what we said earlier, and both of us said it, that we need to make sure that we're working with community and that they are a part of our programs, because they are our best messengers for much of the work that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tamara.
Um, Absolutely. Again, I can't stress it enough that it's about normalizing HIV and normalizing conversations around sexual health, conversations about sex, period. It's happening. And people need to see people that look like them sending these messages out. The stigma is multi-layered, and by seeing messages in commonplaces and hearing people talk about it, it'll help reduce the stigma all the way around. We need to see that it's okay to talk about this in mainstream media, in religious convening spaces, within our homes and our peer groups, our schools, and on the radio. And again, and I agree with Dr. Cynthia, a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from some of our focus groups is that not everybody is even represented in the commercials, even if they are the pharmaceutical commercials. Everybody is not represented in these places. I find that there are different sectors and communities that come in and we have conversations and they still don't have the knowledge, because when they saw the commercial, the person didn't look like them, so they didn't receive or think that it was for him or her. So they knew that we know that it works, we know that people will receive it, but we have to make sure that it is relatable in whatever kind of way, not in just in the people that are represented, but again, the scenery, like you said, or the background, like going up skiing a mountain. I'm from the hood, so and no mountains over here, right? So I want to see something that is going to look like an image or put me in a place that is familiar to me.
Absolutely. Like, I'm listening to you all, I'm looking at the comments, and like you said, representation is key. It's like when you, like you both stated, when you see yourself, it's like a reflection. When you see yourself, you have this sense of pride, you have this sense of connectivity, you have this sense of I belong in these spaces. At once upon a time, I didn't feel like I belong in these spaces where I know I can see myself. And though I may not be that particular person that's on the screen, there's someone that looks like me. There's someone that has the same pronoun as I do. There's someone that identifies as I am. And I want to take, for example, we see a lot of these PrEP commercials. So we see that there are a lot of our, white male counterparts, and then you see, black men and things of that nature. So of course it's going to cater to a certain demographic. But like, one young lady said, like, what happens to the cisgender community, not cisgender community, excuse me, the transgender community? What happened to those, black women of, cisgender, especially when there's not much research as it relates to PrEP with cisgendered women? So again, I say, and I echo the sentiments, representation is key. And when you have representation, again, it normalizes and it helps with not so much stigma. And I want to kind of like caveat into that, to bring in another question. So again, we're talking about representation, we're talking about stigma, we're talking about those languages. How important is it, especially in this line of work and just in everyday interaction, that we make sure we are not reinforcing trauma when we are having conversations that can be stigmatizing?
It's vitally important. Stigma really inflicts a hardship, and it allows us to decrease the amount of prevention care and other services that we provide. So we need to make sure that we, as organizations and people within the HIV workforce, are destigmatizing everything, every step of the way. Stigma is such a heavy burden for individuals to carry. Most African American Black people are already stigmatized. So we start off with that. And then you keep adding things. So you add HIV, you add transgender, you add reentry, you add all of these things. And it's just too much of a burden for most individuals to tackle. So we have to, as organizations, make sure that we have those resources that will assist individuals in helping them. And some of the ways that we can get rid of stigma is by having those resources. So we're helping you with housing, we're helping you with employment. We're making sure that we have a buddy program, for example, to get you into services, to make sure that you're going to your care services and you're staying on your treatment. Those are things that we as community-based organizations can do to assist individuals. And then I think going back to that trust and love and having open conversations and freely letting people in and making them not feel stigmatized because of who they are. And so having that person that looks, if I'm a trans woman of color, I want to come in and see a trans woman of color. It's really important because that who I know that she understands what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Cynthia. Tamara?
um, it's very important, as she said, having creating a safe space, so that the clients and patients can come in and feel comfortable with all the optics that are around them, and with the individuals that they encounter for their services. But when we talk about also trauma and re-stigmatizing, I think one of the things that we haven't really touched on is the mental health of the individuals, of us as a Black community, which is another thing that has been so taboo, has been also put in that taboo box, is our mental health services. And so the trauma of just being Black, the trauma of just growing up in Black communities, these are also things that we need to address, and also destigmatize as well, and provide those services. So I think that having more resources as well to access to mental health care providers, professional counselors, and therapists, those who are addressing substance use issues, these are vital and important in our Black community. And we need to do more work around normalizing mental health services, making our mental health a part of self-care, along with HIV prevention, and all of the other resources and healthcare services that we push.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I don't even have to follow up with it because Dr. Cynthia and Tamara, y'all said enough. So I know we're approaching the end of time. And so I want to just pose this brief last question. And I would like to ask, what advice or wisdom do you all have for organizations, community members, etc., regarding the importance of continuing spreading HIV awareness, especially within the Black community? And Tamara, you can go.
Well, we cannot stop, and no matter where we are and how far we've come, what the numbers and data look like, we cannot stop. Now more than ever, spreading HIV awareness is of utmost importance, and there is strength in numbers. We need the community's buy-in. We are here, we're doing the work, but we need the community. We need everyone's help, and no one's voice is too small. Everyone has to play their part. Unification will result in impact globally, locally, and nationally. So, spreading awareness will help to normalize HIV and fight stigma. I encourage community members, other organizations to get involved, stay involved, to find places like Dr. Cynthia's organization, like Abounding Prosperity, to find out what they can do, and how they can get involved. not spreading HIV awareness is going to negatively impact us all. And a lot of times people think that they don't have the tools to help, but they do, because everyone has a voice. So everybody can help. And so, lastly, as we're closing here, I want to encourage everyone that has a voice to empower themselves with knowledge and to use their voice to spread awareness and to take control of their sexual health.
Thank you, Tamara. Dr. Cynthia?
She pretty much covered it, but I just want to add, I think continuing to make sure that we use different vehicles to reach to people. You reach them in various ways, and we've touched on that a little bit. So making sure we're using social media, we're using the old-fashioned outreach. We have community health workers. We are using a variety of ways to get individuals in. And then once we get individuals in, don't just give them a resource and send them back out the door. Let's work with them and make them a part of our programs and communities. It's something that has assisted me throughout the career. I've always managed to make sure that I work with community members, that they are part of my programs. I have people I can just call and say, you know what, we're doing this. Are you interested in being a part of it? It's so important because that shows that you really care, that you really took time to listen to what their issues are. And we also have to continue to learn. So we do not know it all. So I always say, let's get all of the information. Let's listen to the community and get those resources. So have listening sessions and focus groups and one-on-one interviews.
Absolutely. I just love all the advice and wisdom that was shared from Dr. Cynthia and Tamara. But before we get off, I will have to say that there have been some amazing comments throughout this entire live that I just want us to take a brief moment just to highlight a few of these comments. Maybe some of these comments may need to be addressed. So if we can have that happen for a split second, we'll greatly appreciate it. Okay, so here is a question. How do you strategically navigate conversation around complacency that intersects with racism with folks with a clinical background? It seems as though some folks feel as if this is beating a dead horse, yet they go along to get along, which can be harmful.
I think I would just say one, racism is a public health crisis. And start from there. So if people want to act scientific and get into the science of it, let's talk about the science of it. It is a crisis that we need to deal with. Until we get rid of the structural challenges that Black people have, we're going to continue to have increases in those populations. And so talk to them from that standpoint and say, how can we fix it? Let's let you be a part of the conversation and a part of the change.
Absolutely. Okay. We're going to move along. What can Black gay men do to better support women, all women, in having the conversation? We have learned so much in our fight. How can we aid theirs?
Mm. That's a really good question, because I know that we have had a lot of focus in fighting HIV among Black gay men. And so I think that Black gay men can help with women and help us in our plight by continuing to educate and continue to support, because of the success and how receptive HIV awareness has been among Black gay men, and how they have combated all of the so many obstacles and so many barriers, and being able to support Black women. And now that the cases are rising in Black women, then we need to know how we too can combat HIV, and what strategies would work for us as well. And some of the same tools, some of the same strategies will work for Black women.
Absolutely. Thank you. There should be a transgender person of experience on this panel. So let me tell you something. I agree So much so that if you continue on following AIDS United in our Melanated Movement campaign and initiative, we will be addressing and having a person of trans experience on our panel. So I want to thank you for just sharing that comment, because a lot of times people don't feel like, oh, well, we just talking from a cisgender standpoint. So best to believe, and we've already taken steps to be proactive in ensuring that all parties, all identities are represented in our movement. So thank you so much for addressing that comment. Okay, so we have another question. How do we break through silo mentality among the Black community? Most of the nonprofits are grant funded and struggle to mobilize.
Hmm.
I think we need to advocate for more funding equity, which is something that we have been trying to do. We are at the emerging infancy stages, but we need to continue to do that. For one, we want to make sure that organizations are not competing against each other, but more so joining forces. So we've almost created a place in which folks don't want to work together, organizations don't want to work together because they're fighting for the same small amount of dollars. So we need to make sure in our communities that we are saying, we want you to collaborate and partner. That is the two key things that needs to take place, and we all need to work together to make change.
Absolutely. Tamara, anything you want to add?
Yes, and also creating diversity within the organizations, because so many organizations and because of funding, we traditionally have been CBOs and ASOs specifically for Black gay men programming. And so what we've had to do is to pivot and then offer other services that are appealing to different members of the community, and so that they aren't in silos. Now we can operate then as one organization serving Black people. And so that's the approach that organizations can take, is to offer different programs so that it's appealing to different sectors of each community within the community.
Absolutely. Well, I say just again, thank you all so much for being a part of the conversation, for the comments, for the feedback. We don't take anything lightly. And again, like we've expressed throughout this entire live, like just having the conversation, normalizing, like when we have these conversations, it creates a space of love. It creates a space of trust. It creates a space of grace, and it creates a space of rapport. So I just want to thank Dr. Cynthia and Tamara so much for just your time, your wisdom, your expertise, your love, your grace, and just your disposition as Black women and just a part of the Black community. We truly appreciate you. And again, just having this conversation definitely helps us integrate HIV within Black history. So before we close, I want to continue to encourage everyone to follow us on all social media platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything, to make sure you get all the information that you need. As you can see, you can visit us at www.aceunited.org/melanated-movement for all of your needs. And this is only just the beginning of the conversation. If you want more, if you want more representation, more feedback, we got you here at ACE United. So again, Dr. Cynthia and Tamara, thank you all so much. Thanks for everyone joining in, and tune in as we continue on making a melanated movement in 2023. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.